The hum of the hospital was a familiar song to Marcus, a low thrum that vibrated through the polished linoleum floors he pushed his mop across. Each sweep and swirl of his bucket was a quiet rhythm, a dance he performed nightly. At 34, he wasn't what most people pictured when they thought of a hospital worker. He was tall, with kind eyes that crinkled at the corners, and a beard that was always neatly trimmed. He wore the blue custodian uniform with a quiet pride, knowing that even though he cleaned up messes, he was also helping keep a safe place for people to heal. His mind, though, wasn't always on the overflowing trash cans or the streaky windows. It often drifted to a small, cozy apartment across town where his 7-year-old daughter Lily was likely fast asleep, dreaming of princesses or maybe even dinosaurs. He imagined her soft breath, the way her hand sometimes curled around her favorite stuffed animal. Being a single dad was a job that never truly ended, a constant background hum of love and worry. He'd left a different life behind to be there for her, a life of teaching, of helping children with special needs. Now he cleaned floors, but the caring heart of a teacher still beat strong inside him, even if it was hidden under a custodian's uniform. While Marcus found his own quiet rhythm in the hospital's late-night hours, another kind of rhythm, a broken one, played out in the children's wing. Dr. Eleanor Vance, a brilliant doctor in her mid-30s, walked those halls with a different kind of burden. Her perfectly tailored white coat and sharp, intelligent eyes couldn't hide the deep lines of worry etched around them. She was known for her quick thinking and calm under pressure, but when it came to her own son, Leo, that calm often broke. Leo, who was 8 years old, had autism. He was in the hospital for some tests, but mostly he was just there, a small, silent figure in his room. He wouldn't talk. He wouldn't look at anyone. He pushed away every toy, every offer of comfort, and every specialist who tried to help. Eleanor had brought in the best doctors, the kindest therapists, but Leo remained locked in his own world. Each refusal, each blank stare from her son felt like a fresh stab to her heart. She was a doctor who healed others, yet she felt completely helpless to heal her own child. The distress was a heavy cloak she wore, even as she tried to maintain her professional front. She longed for a sign, any sign, that her son was still in there, waiting to be reached. Marcus often saw Eleanor passing through the halls, a blur of white coat and worried frown. He didn't know her story, but he could read the sadness in her hurried steps and the way her shoulders seemed to carry a heavy weight. One evening, as he cleaned the quiet corridor outside Leo's room, the door was left slightly ajar. He paused, his mop leaning against the wall, and saw Leo. The small boy sat hunched in a corner, facing the wall, utterly still. A stack of colorful building blocks lay untouched beside him, and a friendly-looking nurse stood a few feet away, her face a mix of concern and helplessness. A pang went through Marcus. He remembered moments like this with his late wife, Sarah, when panic would take hold and she would withdraw, unreachable. He'd learned then that loud words and too much touch only made things worse. Instead, he'd taught her simple rhythm games, gentle taps on her hand, or a soft beat on his knee. The steady, predictable rhythm had been like a lifeline, pulling her back to him, calming the storm inside. Looking at Leo, so small and lost, Marcus felt a quiet tug, a familiar urge to reach out. He knew it wasn't his place, but the memory of Sarah and the silent plea in Leo's stillness made his heart ache to try. The urge to help was too strong to ignore. Marcus glanced at the nurse, who was still trying, gently, to coax Leo to look at a picture book. He knew the rules. Custodians cleaned, doctors doctored. But sometimes a different kind of help was needed. Quietly, carefully, Marcus pushed open the door a little wider and stepped into the room. The nurse looked up, surprised, then a little confused. Marcus offered a small, reassuring smile and then, without a word, slowly sank to the floor. He didn't sit directly in front of Leo, but a little to the side, giving the boy space. Then, very softly, he began to tap. A simple, steady beat on his knee, like a gentle heartbeat. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap, tap. It was the same rhythm he'd used with Sarah, a pattern that was easy to follow, not too fast, not too slow. He didn't look at Leo directly, just kept his eyes on his own hands, letting the sound fill the quiet room. The nurse watched, puzzled but silent. Minutes stretched on. The rhythmic tapping was the only sound. Then, slowly, almost impossibly, Leo's head began to turn. It was a tiny movement, barely a twitch, but it was there. His eyes, wide and unfocused moments before, now seemed to be drawn, ever so slightly, toward the source of the quiet beat. Marcus felt a jolt of surprise, a small thrill of hope. It was working. Eleanor walked back to Leo's room, her mind heavy with the day's frustrations. She pushed open the door, ready to face another session of gentle coaxing and silent rejections, when her eyes landed on a sight that made her jaw drop. There, on the floor, was a custodian. A custodian! He was sitting calmly, tapping his knee, and Leo, her Leo, was actually looking in his direction. A surge of anger, hot and sharp, shot through her. How dare he? This was completely unprofessional, an interference with a delicate situation that no one, especially not a cleaner, had the right to disrupt. She was about to speak, to demand he leave, when something stopped her. Leo's gaze wasn't fleeting. His small head was still turned, and a flicker, a tiny spark of something, seemed to be in his eyes. He wasn't recoiling. He wasn't screaming. He was listening. Eleanor watched in stunned disbelief as Marcus continued his gentle rhythm. All the renowned specialists, all the years of therapy, all the expensive toys and careful approaches had failed to get this kind of response. Yet here was a man in a blue uniform, just tapping his knee, and her son was responding. The anger began to melt, replaced by a bewildering mix of shock, confusion, and a tiny, fragile seed of hope. As Eleanor stood watching Marcus and Leo, a memory flickered in Marcus's mind, a bittersweet image from a life that felt both long ago and yesterday. He remembered a classroom, bright with colorful posters and the joyful, sometimes loud energy of children. He was Mr. Marcus then, a special education teacher, full of passion and new ideas. He loved finding ways to connect with kids who saw the world a little differently, whose minds worked in unique and wonderful ways. He lived for those small breakthroughs, the moments when a child's eyes would light up with understanding. Then came Lily, his precious daughter, and a year later, the sudden heartbreaking loss of Sarah, his wife. The world shifted. Being Mr. Marcus, the dedicated teacher, no longer felt right. Lily needed him completely. She needed his calm presence, his gentle patience, all day, every day. It was a choice that felt like no choice at all. He packed away his lesson plans, said goodbye to his students, and traded his teaching salary for a custodian's wage, which allowed him to work nights and be with Lily during the day. It was a quiet sacrifice, one he never regretted. Even now, pushing his mop, he carried those years of teaching in his heart, a deep well of understanding for children like Leo. Over the next few days, a quiet ritual began to unfold in Leo's hospital room. Marcus, during his breaks, would slip in. He wouldn't push, wouldn't demand, just quietly be there. His rhythm games grew a little more complex, a simple tap, 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 then a pause, then 2 taps. Sometimes he'd use a soft plastic cup, making a gentle scraping sound against the floor. He never forced eye contact, but kept his gaze soft, mostly on his hands, inviting Leo to join his world of sound and touch. And Leo did. Slowly, almost like a shy flower turning towards the sun, he began to open up. One evening, he reached out a tiny finger and tapped the floor near Marcus's hand, mirroring a beat. It was a small, monumental step. Another time, Marcus brought in 2 small soft shakers from the play area, and Leo, after much watching, gently took one, shaking it faintly to Marcus's rhythm. Eleanor watched these interactions, often from the doorway, a silent witness. Her initial anger had faded, replaced by a deep, unsettling wonder. She still felt a pang of professional unease, but it was overshadowed by the sheer joy of seeing her son connect, even a little. A reluctant respect for Marcus began to grow in her heart. A quiet acknowledgement that this humble custodian held a key no specialist had found. The quiet understanding forming between Marcus and Leo, and the tentative respect growing in Eleanor, was about to hit a wall. One morning, Marcus was called into the office of Mr. Harrison, the hospital administrator, a man known for his strict rules and love for proper procedure. Sitting beside him was Mrs. Albright, the head of nursing, her face tight with disapproval. "Marcus," Mr. Harrison began, his voice firm, "we've received reports of your interactions with a patient in the children's wing." Marcus felt a cold knot form in his stomach. He knew this was coming. "I was just trying to help, sir," Mrs. Albright sniffed. "Help? Mr. Miller, you are a custodian. Your job is to maintain the cleanliness of this facility, not to engage with patients, especially not without proper training or authorization. This is highly unprofessional conduct." But Leo was responding, Marcus tried to explain, thinking of the small taps, the faint shakes of the shaker. No one else could get through to him. Mr. Harrison leaned forward, his expression stern. "Regardless, you violated hospital protocol. This kind of interference can have serious consequences. We cannot have staff acting outside their designated roles. We are considering immediate termination of your employment." The words hung in the air, heavy and chilling. Marcus thought of Lily, of his small apartment, and the fear was sharp and real. The news of Marcus's potential firing reached Eleanor like a cold splash of water. Her first thought was of Leo. He had finally started to show signs of life, of engagement. To take Marcus away now felt like snatching away the first real hope she'd had in years. She marched straight to Mr. Harrison's office, her professional calm replaced by a fierce determination. "Mr. Harrison, Mrs. Albright," she began, her voice steady but firm. "I understand your concerns about hospital protocol. However, I must speak on behalf of Mr. Miller." Mr. Harrison raised an eyebrow. "Dr. Vance, this is an administrative matter, not a medical one." "It is entirely medical when it concerns the well-being of a patient, especially my son," Eleanor countered, holding his gaze. "Leo has been unresponsive to every specialist, every therapy, every effort we've made. For days, he has been in a world of his own. But since Mr. Miller started quietly engaging him, I have seen changes. Small ones, yes, but profound. Leo has made eye contact, he's responded to sounds, he's even imitated a rhythm. This is progress we haven't seen in years." She paused, her voice softening slightly. "Mr. Miller has formed a unique bond with my son, a connection that no amount of official training has been able to achieve. To dismiss him now would be to deny Leo the one thing that has finally begun to reach him." Her words carried the weight of a mother's desperate plea and a doctor's sharp observation, leaving no doubt about her conviction. Despite Eleanor's powerful defense, Mr. Harrison and Mrs. Albright held firm. Hospital rules were hospital rules. The matter was too serious, they stated, to be handled behind closed doors. It was decided that Marcus's fate would be determined at a public hospital board hearing. The day of the hearing arrived heavy with tension. Marcus sat stiffly, feeling small and out of place in his neat but worn suit, facing a panel of serious-faced board members. Mr. Harrison presented the case, detailing Marcus's breaches of conduct and unauthorized patient interaction. Mrs. Albright added her concerns about maintaining a professional environment. Then, it was Eleanor's turn to speak. She walked to the podium, her usual confident stride a little more urgent today. Her voice, usually calm and measured, vibrated with a raw passion that surprised even Marcus. "Members of the board," she began, her gaze sweeping across the room. "I stand before you not just as a doctor, but as a mother. My son, Leo, has autism. For years, we have sought every possible treatment, every specialist, every hope. And for years, we have met with silence." She paused, her eyes finding Marcus's. Then, a custodian, Mr. Marcus Miller, without any formal instruction, simply sat down and offered my son a rhythm that, for the first time, broke through the wall Leo had built around himself.
This man, who you now consider unprofessional, has achieved what no trained professional could. He didn't follow a rule book. He followed his heart.
And in doing so, he gave my son and me a flicker of hope. Her words hung in the air, a powerful plea that echoed with truth. Just as Eleanor finished, her powerful words filling the room with a mother's conviction, a ripple went through the audience. A woman stood up, her face a mix of nervousness and determination. "Excuse me," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "My name is Mrs. Rodriguez. My daughter Sophia was a patient here last month, recovering from surgery. She has severe anxiety and often gets scared in new places." She looked at Marcus, then back at the board. "Mr. Miller," she continued, "he would always clean our room with such a gentle manner. He'd hum soft tunes, and if Sophia was feeling scared, he'd find a moment to draw a silly face on her juice carton or make a friendly wave. It made all the difference. He wasn't just cleaning, he was caring." Another parent, a father named Mr. Chen, then rose. "My son, David, has Down syndrome." He was afraid of the dark. Mr. Miller noticed, and every night he would pause at our door, make sure the hall light was just right, and quietly say good night. He always remembered David's name. He has a way with children that is simply magic. One by one, more parents stepped forward. They weren't doctors or administrators, just ordinary people whose children had been touched by Marcus's quiet kindness. They spoke of his soft greetings, his patient nods, the way he always seemed to know when a child needed a moment of calm. Each story painted a picture of a man who saw beyond his job description, a man who truly saw the children. The room fell silent as the last parent finished speaking, their simple, honest words hanging in the air more powerfully than any legal argument. The board members, initially stern and focused on rules, now looked thoughtful, some even visibly moved. They took a short break to discuss, and Marcus sat, heart-pounding, trying to prepare for the worst. Eleanor sat near him, offering a small, reassuring smile that spoke volumes. When the board returned, Mr. Harrison, though still looking a bit stiff, cleared his throat. "We have heard compelling testimony today," he announced. "While hospital protocol is vital, the well-being of our patients is paramount. The board has decided that Mr. Miller will not be terminated." A wave of relief washed over Marcus, so strong it almost made him dizzy. Mr. Harrison continued, "Furthermore, given Mr. Miller's unique ability to connect with our younger patients and his background in special education, we would like to offer him a newly created position. A patient support specialist specifically for the children's wing. It would involve working with children who need extra comfort, helping them feel safe, and working closely with their doctors and families." Marcus blinked, stunned. A patient support specialist? It was like a dream, a chance to use his true gifts again, right here in the hospital. He looked at Eleanor, whose eyes were shining with a mix of relief and pride. It was more than just keeping his job. It was a recognition of the heart he put into his work, a chance to truly heal. The days that followed the board meeting were filled with a new, gentle energy. Marcus, now officially the hospital's first patient support specialist, moved through the children's wing with a purpose that resonated deeply with his past life. He still cleaned, but now his presence was welcomed, his interactions encouraged. Eleanor often sought him out, no longer with a professional distance, but with a quiet ease. They would talk in the hospital cafeteria, sharing hurried coffees between shifts, or sometimes just outside Leo's room, watching him play. Eleanor found herself opening up, telling Marcus about the lonely struggle of raising Leo, the guilt she felt when she couldn't reach him, the constant fear for his future. Marcus, in turn, spoke of Sarah, of the quiet bravery of being a single parent, and the simple joy Lily brought to his life. In these shared moments, a deep trust began to grow between them. It was born of shared worries and hopes for their children. Eleanor saw past the uniform to the gentle, understanding man beneath. A man who saw children not as problems to be fixed, but as unique beings to be understood. Marcus saw beyond the brilliant doctor to the tired, loving mother, burdened by anxieties that mirrored his own. A deep sense of healing bloomed, a comfort in knowing they were not alone in their journeys. Months passed, bringing a gentle rhythm to Eleanor and Marcus's lives. Leo was a different child. He still had his quiet moments, but he now looked at people, sometimes even smiled. He played with Marcus, not just with rhythms, but with building blocks and soft toys, his small hand reaching out more freely. Eleanor found herself looking forward to Marcus's shifts, not just for Leo's sake, but for her own. Their conversations grew longer, softer, filled with laughter and a quiet understanding that went beyond their shared care for children. A spark, tender and true, began to glow between them, promising more than just friendship. One sunny afternoon, Eleanor was packing up Leo's things from his hospital room, ready to finally take him home for good. Leo sat at a small table, busily drawing with a box of bright crayons. He was humming a soft tune, a melody Marcus often tapped. When he finished, he proudly held up his artwork. It was a simple drawing, but clear as day. 3 stick figures stood hand in hand. A tall man with a beard, a woman with a kind smile, and a smaller boy in the middle. At the top, written in shaky crayon letters, was the word Family. Eleanor's breath caught in her throat. She looked at the drawing, then at Leo's beaming face, then at Marcus, who had just walked in. His eyes met hers, and in them she saw a future, bright and full of hope. A new family beginning to bloom, drawn in the innocent, honest lines of a child's crayon.